All right, so let's dive into something I think every parent thinks about at some point. How to keep our kids motivated when it comes to school, engaged and ready to learn. And for this dope dive, we are looking at 7 ways to motivate children in school. It's a guide from the Parent Institute.
Yeah.
And hoping to unearth some golden nuggets for our listeners.
It is a treasure trove of insights. Absolutely. And I think one of the most interesting things is how it starts. It starts by acknowledging those signs, those telltale signs of a kid who's maybe struggling with motivation.
Yeah. And it's interesting. The guide talks about how unmotivated kids often pick things that are way too easy for them. It's almost as if they're trying to fly under the radar.
Exactly. Playing it safe, avoiding that risk of failure. But that actually stunts their growth in the long run. It's like they're saying, don't expect much from me and I won't disappoint.
That's such a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way before. And that kind of leads us to the first big takeaway, I think, the power of expectations.
Right. And it's not about pushing kids beyond their limits, but it's about recognizing their unique strengths and weaknesses, understanding their interests, and then working with them to set those realistic goals.
So it's a collaboration, not a dictatorship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the guide even recommends reevaluating expectations every few months. Because let's face it, kids evolve so quickly.
Yeah.
You know what might have been challenging for them in September? Might be a breeze by December.
Oh, that makes total sense. Stay in tune with their progress. Adjust expectations accordingly.
Exactly. Now, building on this idea of expectations, the second way is all about setting specific and measurable goals. And get this, research has shown that written goals are significantly more likely to be achieved.
Wow, that's fascinating. Why do you think writing them down makes such a difference? Is it some kind of psychological trick?
I think there are a few things at play. First, the act of writing something down. It forces us to clarify our thoughts. It moves that goal from a fuzzy idea to a concrete plan. Second, having it written down makes it more visible, a constant reminder of what we're aiming for. And finally, there's something about physically writing that solidifies our commitment, like signing a contract with ourselves.
Yeah, I get it. It makes it real. It's not just floating around in your head anymore.
Right. And the guide even goes a step further. Suggests posting those written goals where you can see them every day, on the fridge, bathroom mirror, wherever it works for you. It's like a visual affirmation, a constant nudge in the right direction.
Okay, I love that. Now, speaking of making things concrete, the guide also emphasizes, making those goals specific and measurable. Can you give me an example?
Absolutely. Let's imagine you have a child named Connor, and Connor wants to improve his math grade. So instead of just saying, I want to do better in math, a specific and measurable goal might be, I will raise my math grade from a C to a B by the end of next quarter.
Oh, that's so much clearer. It gives him a tangible target to work towards. But what if he's struggling to even get started? What if he feels overwhelmed by that goal?
Well, that's where the guide's 5 steps to accomplish nearly anything comes in. It's this brilliant little sidebar. It outlines this step-by-step process to break down goals into more manageable chunks.
Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Actionable advice. Tell me more about these 5 steps.
The step that stood out to me the most, and this might surprise you, is all about making a public commitment. The guide suggests finding someone you trust, a parent, a teacher, a friend, and telling them about your goal. This act of verbalizing it to another person dramatically increases your chances of success.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. But it makes perfect sense. It's like there's a level of accountability. When you share your goals with someone else, you're less likely to let them down.
Right, and it also creates this support system. That person can offer encouragement, check in on your progress, celebrate your wins along the way.
Okay, so we've talked about setting the stage with realistic expectations, helping kids define those goals. What's the next step in this motivational journey?
Well, the third way is all about showing our kids that school matters to us. And this goes beyond just saying the words. It's about our actions, our attitudes, the environment we create at home.
I remember this from my childhood. My parents always made a big deal out of school events, like open houses and parent-teacher conferences. It made me feel like they genuinely cared about what was happening in my academic world.
That's a perfect example. Think about it. If you're constantly complaining about school, dreading homework time, dismissing the importance of pests, your child is going to absorb those attitudes. But if you create a positive and supportive learning environment at home, they're much more likely to see school as something valuable, as a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Okay, so we've established the importance of expectations, goals, and demonstrating that we value education. What's next?
This one's particularly fascinating. It speaks to the fact that no two children are alike. The fourth way encourages us to understand and support our child's unique learning style.
Oh, I've heard about learning styles. There are visual learners, auditory learners, and what's the third one?
Kinesthetic learners, those are the ones who learn best through hands-on activities and movement.
Ah, yes. So how do we figure out our child's learning style? And then how do we use that information to help them?
Well, there are assessments, observation techniques,
Yeah.
but honestly, sometimes it's just about paying attention. Does your child light up when they get to build something? Do they seem to retain information better after hearing it read aloud? Are they constantly fidgeting during quiet study time? Those are all clues.
So let's say I've discovered my child is a kinesthetic learner. How do I apply that knowledge? What are some concrete things I can do?
The guide has some fantastic suggestions. For kinesthetic learners, it might be about incorporating movement into their study routine. Maybe they pace while they recite facts, or use building blocks to represent mathematical concepts. It could even be as simple as taking study breaks to do a few jumping jacks or run around the block, get their bodies involved in the learning process.
Oh, that's brilliant. Who knew that movement could be so beneficial for learning? It's all about those connections between the body and the brain.
Exactly. It makes learning more fun too, which is always a bonus. Now, speaking of making learning enjoyable, the next way is all about the language we use. It's called Speak the Language of Encouragement.
You know, I've always believed in the power of positive reinforcement, but I'll admit, I sometimes struggle with the difference between praise and encouragement. Aren't they basically the same thing?
It's subtle but important. Praise often focuses on the outcome, like saying, "Great job on getting an A." Encouragement focuses on the effort and the process, regardless of the result.
Okay. So instead of saying, "Wow, you got a perfect score on that test," I might say, "I'm so proud of how hard you studied and how much you've learned."
Exactly. It's about acknowledging their dedication, their perseverance, their willingness to step outside their comfort zone.
It's about celebrating the journey, not just the destination. I love that. Okay, so we've covered setting expectations, defining goals, showcasing the value of education, understanding learning styles, and speaking the language of encouragement. What's next?
Well, the sixth way takes learning beyond the classroom, into the real world, reinforcing learning at home and in the community.
So it's about making those connections between what they're learning in textbooks and what they experience in everyday life.
Absolutely. It's about showing them that learning isn't confined to the classroom.
I remember when my son was studying ancient civilizations in school, we took a family trip to the museum to see all those incredible artifacts from Egypt and Greece. He was like a sponge soaking it all up.
What a fantastic example. That's exactly what the guide encourages, finding those real-world connections that bring learning to life. It might be visiting a historical site, volunteering at a local organization, even just watching a documentary together as a family.
It's about making learning an adventure, something that sparks their curiosity, makes them want to explore more.
Okay, we're on the last one. This feels like the most important one, especially in today's world, where kids face so much pressure, so much uncertainty.
I agree. The seventh way is all about encouraging resilience, helping our kids develop that inner strength, those coping mechanisms, to bounce back from setbacks and navigate challenges.
You know, we often talk about the importance of academic success, but resilience, it's arguably the most valuable life skill we can teach our children.
I couldn't agree more. It's about equipping them to handle those ups and downs of life, not just in school, but in all aspects.
And it's not just about telling them to toughen up. There are things we can do as parents to help cultivate resilience. What are some of the guide's suggestions? Well, one of the most powerful strategies is to provide unconditional love and support. The guide highlights that resilient children believe that an adult in their life will always be there for them, no matter what.
That sense of security, that knowing they have a safe and loving base to return to, can make all the difference when it comes to facing challenges. What else?
Another key strategy is to give children age-appropriate choices, opportunities for decision-making. It empowers them, gives them a sense of control over their own lives, even when things feel chaotic.
So instead of dictating every aspect of their day, we can offer them choices within a structured framework, like, do you want to do your math homework before or after dinner?
Precisely. It's about striking that balance between structure and autonomy, letting them experience the natural consequences of their choices, both positive and negative.
That makes so much sense. It's about preparing them for the real world, where they're constantly faced with choices and consequences.
Exactly. Through those experiences, they develop resilience, that ability to adapt, learn from mistakes, and keep moving forward.
This conversation has really got me thinking. I know we've been focusing on these 7 ways to motivate children, but isn't it true that these strategies can benefit adults too?
That's such a great point. These principles are universal.
Yeah.
We can all benefit from setting clear expectations, defining meaningful goals, embracing a growth mindset.
It's a reminder that learning and personal growth are lifelong pursuits. But there's one more thing I wanted to touch on, something that's always a hot topic. When we talk about motivation, rewards.
Ah, yes, the age-old debate. To reward or not to reward? The guide actually acknowledges the complexity of this issue.
I've always been a little wary of relying too heavily on rewards. It feels like it could create this extrinsic motivation where kids are only doing things for the prize, not for the inherent joy of learning.
You're hitting on a key point. If the reward becomes the sole focus, it can undermine intrinsic motivation. The guide suggests finding a middle ground.
So not banning rewards altogether,
Yeah,
but using them strategically and sparingly.
exactly. It might be celebrating milestones with a special outing, or acknowledging exceptional effort with a small treat. But the real goal is to help children discover the intrinsic rewards of learning. That sense of accomplishment, that feeling of mastery, the joy of expanding their knowledge and understanding.
Those are the rewards that stay with you, long after the stickers and the trophies have faded.
Precisely. And that brings us back to fostering a growth mindset, where the focus is on effort, progress, and the love of learning itself.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation. It's making me realize how much power we have as parents to shape our children's attitudes towards learning.
Absolutely. We can't force them to be motivated, but we can create an environment where motivation can flourish. And that's what these 7 ways are all about. It's about being their guide, their cheerleader, their partner in this incredible journey of learning and growth.
As we wrap up this deep dive, into motivating our children, it strikes me that these 7 ways aren't just a checklist. It's really a philosophy of parenting, a way of approaching our children's education with intention, with understanding.
I think so. It's like creating a culture of learning in our homes, where curiosity is celebrated,
Yeah.
effort is valued,
Yeah.
and mistakes are seen as opportunities.
Yeah, it's about empowering our children to become active participants in their learning, right? Give them a voice, a choice.
Absolutely. When children feel a sense of ownership over their education, their motivation just skyrockets. They're no longer just going through the motions. They're engaged, asking questions, seeking out challenges, and pushing their own boundaries.
I'm already thinking about how I can apply this to my own parenting. I love that idea of incorporating more movement into my son's study routine. He's definitely a kinesthetic learner, always bouncing around and fidgeting.
And remember, it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as simple as having him stand up and stretch every 20 minutes, or use flashcards while he walks around the room. Even small changes can make a big difference.
I'm so glad the guide included that section on learning styles. It's just a reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to education. What works for one child might not work for another, and that's okay. It's about finding what resonates with their individual needs and preferences.
It is. It's about recognizing their strengths, helping them develop their own learning toolkit. Speaking of resources, the guide also includes a great list of books and websites that delve deeper into these topics. I know you're an avid reader, so I definitely recommend checking those out.
Oh, I will. I always love discovering new resources. One book that caught my eye was Bright Minds, Poor Grades, Understanding and Motivating Your Underachieving Child. It seems to address the challenges of those kids who have so much potential, but struggle to translate that into academic success.
That's a great one. It reminds us that every child has that capacity to learn, to thrive, but sometimes they need a little extra support to unlock their full potential. And sometimes it's about addressing those underlying issues that might be hindering their motivation, like anxiety, learning differences, or even just a lack of confidence.
It's about looking beyond the grades and seeing the whole child, understanding their individual needs and challenges. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this whole deep dive, shifting our focus from controlling our children's education to empowering them to take ownership of it.
It's about being their guide on the side, not the sage on the stage, fostering their love of learning, their curiosity, their resilience, and trusting them to navigate their own journey, knowing we're there to support them every step of the way.
So well said. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. What's one small step you can take today to apply these insights? to your own parenting journey. Maybe it's having a conversation with your child about their learning style, or setting aside dedicated time for family learning adventures. Whatever it is, remember that even small changes can make a ripple effect, igniting a spark of motivation and a lifelong love of learning in your child. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep growing together.